My name's Harriet. I'm a primary school teacher and book photographer over on Instagram at These Novel Thoughts. But I've always wanted to be a novelist, and this is my first novel, The Hellion. A few years ago, I learned about the Pendle Witch Trials, which took place in Lancashire in 1612, and I was fascinated. I've always had an interest in the macabre and the gory and the dark, and this tale has all of those in spades. During these trials, 10 people, 8 women, 2 men, lost their lives. They were found guilty of witchcraft and they were hung. And I was just fascinated. How could that have happened in such a small community? What were the events that led to this? When I dug into it a little bit further, I discovered that the main witness for the prosecution was a 9-year-old girl. Her name was Janet, and her testimony led to the deaths of her sister, her brother, her mother and her grandmother. Not only that, but 2 of the women who were killed were in their 80s. They were matriarchs, the heads of their houses, but it was clear that there was animosity between those 2 families. They were giving evidence against each other in the trials. They were pitted against one another. There was obviously something a lot deeper at play. So I wanted to imagine what had happened. What were the events that had led up to this? What were the lives that these women had led, and these men? So I'm going to read you the first chapter of my book now. The sun never shone down by Malkin Towers. That's what everyone said. The place was brown or grey in the winter and enveloped in a smell, the smell of death, someone told me. There'd be kids about, dirty ones wearing rags. You'd never go past that way if you could help it because they'd rob you. But the kids weren't the worst thing, even if they were lice-ridden. No, the worst thing was those evil demons, witches, murderers, the lot of them. Some in my family met a sticky end at the hands of them, and there's a dozen families in the valley who could say the same thing. Even now after the whole place is gone, razed to the ground after the trial, I wouldn't go down that way. I'd rather walk 100 miles out of my way. Why? Well, they really tried their best to get them, and they got most, and I do feel better for that. But the worst one by far, she survived. And I know she did some terrible, terrible things. I saw her. She did them to me. She did them to my family. She even did them to her own heathen kind. And she's still out there. I'm always looking over my shoulder. Sometimes my grandchildren will say to me, "Why are you thinking about that, Ma? It's been years and you were just a child. What harm could she do?" And I'll say, "You just count yourselves lucky you didn't have to live it. If you had, you'd know." I'm not misremembering, even if I am getting on in years a bit now, because others know it too. I'm not being superstitious, because others know it too. No one goes down that way by Malkin Towers. She could be anywhere, that one. And if she decided she wanted to get revenge on one of us, well, we wouldn't have a chance. Keep yourself to yourself, that's my advice. Don't go near that evil ruin. And for what it's worth, make sure you say your prayers, although they didn't help as much back then. Thank you. I hope that you can support my novel, The Hellion, and thanks so much for listening.